Dr. Joseph Coughlin. Dr. Joseph Coughlin is the founder and director of MIT's Technology AgeLab. He teaches MIT's Sloan School of Management and the Department of Urban Studies and Planning. Wall Street Journal and MarketWatch, or he is a senior contributor to Forbes, and he is a frequent writer for Wall Street Journal and MarketWatch. Fast Company magazine named him one of the 100 most creative in business and most creative on Twitter. The Wall Street Journal called him one of 12 inventing the future of retirement. And Money magazine called his work in the future of financial services a game changer. He has also been recognized in Switzerland as one of 15 world minds changing how we live, work, and play. His book, The Longevity Economy, was named one of the CEO Reads bestsellers for business. So everybody, please help me welcome, sharing with us, first off to kick our event, Dr. Joseph Coughlin.
Great, thank you so much, Alicia. It's wonderful to be here again. It's not exactly a huge stadium, but what a crowd you've promised, nearly 200,000 people. This is simply amazing. And the campaign for a cause is more than just financial literacy. It is about longevity literacy, how we will all live not just longer, but how we will live better in life tomorrow. So I want to thank you, Alicia, Swan, and your entire community for having me back.
Thank you so much.
What I hope to do today for a few minutes is to give you some insight as to how COVID-19 is affecting us physiologically, how it's affecting us in behavior, but then ultimately give you a little glimpse as to what I think, my humble view of what that future might look like. So let's get started, and let's throw a few of those slides up so folks can follow me along. We have the slides? There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this indeed is your retirement fire drill. But more importantly, it is a longevity fire drill. What I want to show you today is the stress, the anxiety that is associated with COVID-19, frankly, is always with us. Yes, we are having a pandemic pause on how we think about what is important in life. Let's learn from this, though. Let's see how we can navigate all kinds of stresses in our lives, not just to come out on the other side, but to come out on the other side better. So let's think about it. The pandemic has us all panicked. This is a one-of-a-kind of event for 100 years that is affecting all of us. The challenge we have, the question we have, is how scared should you be? The fact of the matter is, all of us are scared. The fact of the matter is this is, shall we say, an existential crisis. It threatens the lives of not just ourselves, but all the people we love. It affects our money, it affects our lives, it affects our families. But let's take a pause for a moment, all of us, whether you're a campaigner or simply somebody out there trying to learn a little bit about what this all means. We all face panic at different times of our lives. Remember the Great Recession? It never left us. We still benchmark what is different today from what it was 10 years ago. We're even still citing issues around the Spanish flu over 100 years ago, trying to learn what that might mean for this now. So fear is normal. And I want to get into what that fear might actually mean. But let's talk about what the fear is looking like. If you're blessed and you've not had to confront COVID directly, you're watching it on the news. You're watching a constant flow of information. You're looking at a conflicting sense of data. What is working? What is not working? What medicine might come out? When might it come out? What are the different numbers that we should look at? And more importantly, that media is not just constant. It is not just crushing. Indeed, it is conflicting. So as a result, it is leaving all of us with a sense of great uncertainty as to what that means. Think about it. We're even learning a whole new vocabulary. We're learning things such as flattening the curve. We're learning things like thinning the herd. It's a whole new thing. And by the way, all of us like to talk about how much we love innovation. Generally speaking, most of us don't like the new because the new is something we don't understand. We don't quite understand it at all. And what we don't understand, we often fear. And think about this. We are constantly getting information. This is a US map, but look at it. What do you do when you see something like this? The first thing you do when you see the map around COVID is, where am I? Where do I fit on the map? The things that scare us have three characteristics at least. Are they novel? That is it new? Do I understand what's going on or not going on? Is it proximate? Is it near me? Because when you see this map, even if you don't do it consciously, you immediately look to see, where am I? And by the way, the next characteristic is it urgent? So is it near me? Is it new? And is it near me? And by the way, the new thing is we're trying to figure it out. Do I run? Do I hide? Do I fight? And for my many, and one of the things that we think about is that when we're stressed and afraid, we go into what is called fight or flight mode. It's often called the reptilian brain in psychology, if you will. Think about it. When you're confronted with something you don't understand, you get more and more stressed. And believe it or not, stress is a good thing. When you think about retirement planning, long-term care planning, you want to get people to think more about what might be. You want to get them stressed enough so that they want to know more. They want to understand. They want to take action. But what happens when I stress you too much? I start pushing you out of the curve. This is called the Yerkes-Dodson's law. That is, I want to get you just anxious and stressed enough to get your attention, to get your action. The COVID crisis has now pushed our reptilian brains over the edge. We're now in the fear zone. We don't know whether to fight or to run. So that fight or flight mode is what's going on and changing exactly how we look at the world. And your brain is changing. Look at the scan. The brain on the left is a normal brain, but under an fMRI scan, when you're under great stress and anxiety, different parts of your brain start firing up. So really, you're not just processing new and novel and maybe threatening information. It's actually changing how your brain is processing information and changing overall structure. But one of the things we also know, it changes you physiologically. From work we do in the MIT AgeLab around stress and driving and stress and many other things, you start to suffer from what we call tunnel vision. Think about it. When you're scared, when that cortisol hormone starts rushing and adrenaline starts running and you feel that anxious feeling in your stomach, you may start to sweat and perspire. Believe it or not, you start looking straight ahead. When you're stressed behind the wheel of a car, you stop seeing on the side, your peripheral vision. Well, that's good because you're trying to decide to run or fight what's in front of you. The challenge, however, is you're also not seeing opportunities to the side of you. So the COVID crisis is more than just a threat to our physical well-being. It is profoundly changing how we look at the world. And we know from the terrible tragedy that happened years ago in Japan that started with an earthquake and then a tsunami and then a nuclear accident, earthquakes and the like. We knew from studying the brains of people who actually survived that crisis, are you ready for this? Their brain actually shrunk. And what happened is they stopped making many connections in their brains. You see, the photo on the left is a normal brain cell, a neuron, if you will, that makes many connections. These connections are the things that allow us to be creative, to be innovative, to reach, to communicate. But when we're under stress for a prolonged period, we narrow down. We stop making connections. We start to become uniformly focused on what I need to do right now. And we miss the opportunities, and we also may miss some of the threats that are off to the side. So that's the physiological side. I know you're saying, gee, I did not sign up for a physiology class or how stress necessarily affects us. But I want you to understand how COVID is affecting all of us from the inside out. So let's get to the outside now. How is COVID affecting us in a behavioral sense? Well, guess what? Age, as you might imagine, from someone from the AgeLab says age matters. As we age, how many of you have already said the following words or heard them from your parents? That life is too short for fill in the blank, whatever that negative thing is. You see, as we get older, we choose to narrow out negative information. We choose to say that, look, my runway is getting shorter, so as a result, I don't have time for bad news. Or I become overconfident. That is, hey, I've made it 50, 60, 70, 80 years. I can handle this. Well, the bad news about that, whether you're a campaigner or a client, is that sometimes that overconfidence does not mean you're necessarily competent. You may be missing very important information about retirement, the fact that you may need long term care, the way you should behave during the pandemic, all kinds of things. How about younger people? They don't quite have it together either, because no matter what you tell them that may be positive, they want to know the negative. They want to know the downside. They want to know the instructions 1, 2, 3, 4, and never skip 2 before I get to 3, even though you can see it coming. So here's the bad news and the good news. Older adults focus on the positive. They focus on what they can control in front of them. Younger people are more neurotic about what might be in the future. They want those instructions, if you will. But if we go to older adults and we start thinking as a group, what is it I can do? How can I be empowered? They will rise. If we tell younger people what it is that they need to do step by step to protect themselves, and as they get older, have families and significant others, then they step up as well. Age and communication matters in times of crisis. How about gender? If age matters, so does gender. So, with all the men in the audience, think about that fight or flight mode. We always want to do something. When we're stressed, we want to fix the problem. We want to do something. We act. Well, we may act. It doesn't mean that we necessarily act correctly, that we take the right judgment. We often don't take enough information in to get that inflow. We just want to fight or flight. How about women? Women are equally fearful in a time of stress, whether it's COVID or a life crisis, a family crisis, a health crisis, whatever it might be. But what we know is that she is more likely, shall we say, to phone a friend, to look online at the issues, to try to explore what her options are, to talk to friends that have similar experiences, similar resources, to ask, how would they deal with this issue overall? And we become more risk adverse. So think about this. When we are under stress, if we were given a gain of certain $50 lottery ticket versus a chance of 0, we will go for that guarantee of 50, even if we had a chance of buying another lottery ticket where it could have been 0 or $105. Under stress, most of us will go with the risk adverse, shall we say, the safe choice. And we also know psychologically that we are likely also to change on other fronts as well. If I don't understand it, if it's vague, if it's ambiguous, such as how many jelly beans are in a jar, and that depends on how much money you get, I don't like it. Think about it. When you're fearful, when you're fearing for your life or fearing for your money or family, whatever it might be, we only go for the sure bet. In fact, we start to lean more on what we think our confidence level is in us rather than smart advice. We see this in health, we see this in wealth. Not exactly a great way to make decisions overall. And we become very loss averse. For my cousins in Canada, I wanted to make sure I added just not US dollars, but Canadian dollars to the picture. What happens is we go into a mode of just don't lose my money, which means we come very close to new opportunities. The challenge is to fight that fight or flight mode, to really try to remain open to the good things that may be happening around us, the new opportunities that are out there. So what are people feeling right now? Pretty much no. My team at the MIT AgeLab has been doing a series of surveys across North America on trying to understand how are attitudes changing, how are behaviors changing. So I'm going to give you the very geeky term of how the world is thinking right now during the pandemic. We are feeling meaninglessness, normlessness, and powerlessness. Let me translate that into something that the rest of us understand, so to speak. The fact is, we don't know what's going on. Things have lost their meaning overall. Try to explain to me from all this conflicting information on the media, what's happening, what's going to work, what's not. When do we get back to so-called normal? Normlessness. The rules, the norms, they're broken. They don't make any sense anymore. We once used to say you could depend on death and taxes. Well, apparently we can depend on death, But even taxes have been moved off. Weddings have been postponed. Schools have gone online. Even taxes were postponed for 4 or 5 months overall. But what we're feeling most, that is the most unnerving, is powerlessness. That is our own ability to affect our future. That uncertainty contributes to an amazing amount of stress and anxiety. And what do we feel when we feel all that? The words that came back to us in our study was that the number 1 through 3 words people felt were they felt worried, they felt stressed, and more importantly, they felt unsure. We all know that. I'm just giving you articulating it. But that constant feeling of that for the last 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 plus weeks, depending where you are in the world, is starting to change our mentality. So getting back to normal becomes more difficult. This is where our literacy of understanding how we are going to navigate life tomorrow becomes even more important. For you campaigners, giving people hope, giving them a roadmap, giving them information is critical to that new sense of control. For all of us that are not campaigners and simply, shall we say, clients, we have to take guidance and smart advice and to try to think calmly about what's in front of us. We will get through to the other side, but we have to ask ourselves, what is that other side going to look like? And so when you're panicked, what do? You buy toilet paper. Remember all the memes and gifts that were out there that were making fun of people buying toilet paper. Believe it or not, it was probably one of the most rational things people were doing. Because when you're panicked, you say, what do I understand? What can I do? What is it I can do to take control? We all know that we're going to use toilet paper eventually. And at that point, the toilet paper was on the shelf, so I'm buying lots and lots of toilet paper. We see this every time it snows, whether it's Canada, upstate New York, the Midwest, where it snows all the time. Every time there's a snowstorm, people go out and buy things like they've never seen snow before. Why? They're managing that stress. They're managing that control. They're trying to take agency, that is their own control back, to manage some degree of certainty in their lives. Well, there's a new toilet paper. You guessed it. Technology has become the new toilet paper. From the studies we did at the MIT AgeLab and the survey we've done through the pandemic, overwhelmingly people bought toilet paper, but there was a real boom on people buying technology. Not just streaming services so they could do Netflix and chill, but rather they were also buying services that kept them connected with loved ones, kept them connected with older folks. And in fact, the folks that were more likely to have children as well as elderly parents bought technologies that were more security oriented. So secure doorbells, ways of monitoring the safety around the home. So yes, technology not only is changing how we live, but indeed, it has become the new way to take control. And I would say it has become the new toilet paper in uncertainty. So how do we end this? How do I think of where we're going? I've explained to you how this is affecting us physiologically, how it's changing us behaviorally, but what's that future look like? What is that new literacy that we're going to need, that longevity literacy, so that we don't just survive the pandemic, but on the other side, all of us and all of our families, we thrive on the other side. There are many pundits out there that suggest that the pandemic has been transformative. I don't think they're so much incorrect as they are woefully incomplete. In my mind, COVID-19 has accelerated things that most of us already saw out there, now broadly in nearly everyone's home. As one science fiction writer once said, the future is already here. It's just not widely distributed. So let me show you how I think it's already becoming distributed. Think about it. Home services are now becoming more normal, not just for the millennials that are sitting in the audience that want their meals delivered or want to call up their car. Suddenly, home services to the house for you, your loved ones, for your parents, your elderly mother who may be living by herself has become a new lifeline. That's not going to go back to so-called normal. There is no going back. When we get stressed and we see a crisis, we go up with stress and anxiety. We seek knowledge. We come up with an understanding. And as we get to the very peak, we start coming back down to normal. But guess what? We never go back down to the same level of calmness or the same behavior that we did before. We are changed. In the literature, we call this punctuated equilibrium. We adapt. And one of those new adaptations is that home is no longer going to be a platform for living, it's going to be a platform for service. How about work from anywhere? We're talking about working from home. Well, no, it's actually more than that. This is going to be working from anywhere, whether it's a cafe, whether it's in the office, at home, in the airport, whatever it might be. When you see companies like Facebook, Twitter, financial companies, law offices, those places that are amenable to working distant, they're all now saying that from 25, 40, 50, as high as 75% of their workforce, they now see in the near future working from home. Many of us were already doing this. We wanted flexibility, but this is going to become the new normal that many of us are going to have to adapt to. Lifelong school. We may be lamenting that our kids had to spend hours on Zoom, or I had to teach my graduate students on Zoom for much of this semester. But the fact of the matter is, this is the new normal. That education or living a life where school is never out is the new normal. For those of us who are looking at retirement, this actually means not just our kids going to school, not just our kids going to college online, but this is the opportunity to ensure that our skills are competitive for a lifetime. So for those of us who want to change careers as our retirement plan, there's no excuse that you don't know how. Now the new normal is take a class, and it does not necessarily mean going to college to do it. And health and caregiving. Think about this. Telehealth used to be something only researchers thought about, or elite hospitals did, where you could get a checkup a day in your home, a strep throat or a flu check for a little kid at home. Now we can do it with our phone. We can do it with our computer. We can check in on mom or dad to see how we're doing without having to read dated magazines, waiting in long lines, and making appointments with doctors who seemingly think that the only time that we're available is during work hours between 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Indeed, telemedicine, telehealth is the new health and in your home. How about finally work and retirement? The fact of the matter is the vast number of us said that we wanted to retire from those jobs that we'd been working in for 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years. But even between Canada and the United States, nearly a third of us also said we want to work until we drop. Not always for the money, but for the meaning, for the social connectivity, for having a reason to get out. Unfortunately, COVID-19 is really torpedoing many of our retirement plans financially, as well as our sense of security. So rethinking how we're going to work and live tomorrow is an important part, not just of our retirement plan, but of our longevity plan overall. And then finally, the real legacy of COVID-19 may be the youngest among us. Gen Z, those kids in their late teens and early 20s. Sociology and psychology tells us if I can understand what you experienced between 17 and 22, whether it was the economy or politics, current events, music, fashion, whatever it is, that has a profound impact on how you see the world. What's right, what's wrong, what you like, what you don't like, whether the price of gas is truly cheap versus very expensive. Quick example, gasoline, $2.49 a gallon. Some people say that's a good price. But I grew up in a time where I remember pumping gas for 25 cents a gallon. So $2.49 in my mind will never be cheap. The real legacy is, will Gen Z in decades to come trust institutions, trust government, really believe that even the things that we took for granted, such as religious practice over 2,000 years, schooling at home, graduation, prom, whatever it might be, if those can be disrupted, what else can be disrupted? So the real outcome of pandemic and COVID-19 is really going to be written in the pages as these young people become parents, consumers, and voters. So finally, I want to ask you, Alicia and Swan were kind enough to give me a moment to ask you for help. We at the MIT AgeLab are recruiting people just like you and loved ones that you have to help us better understand how are you providing care to an older loved one. I don't care if it's just calling up mom and dad saying, hi, how are you? To the much more elaborate care around medicine. If you're interested, if you want to volunteer, take a few surveys, That's all we're asking for. We just want to learn from your experiences. Send us an email. We'll put you on the list, and you'll hear from us over occasionally in terms of asking you, how are you navigating life? How are you caring for a loved one? We're making a panel from around the world. We want you to be part of that. Alicia and the entire Convention for a Cause community, WSB, I thank you so much for having me. If any of you want to follow me and you can't sleep, please follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and sure, Instagram works too. Thank you all. Thank you, Alicia, for everything you're all doing. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Dr. Coughlin. You have been able to really give us certainty as to what many of us thought would be temporary, but now we're with your perspective, helping us understand that a lot of these changes are actually going to be permanent. And again, just re-emphasizing why we're having this event today. So yes, everyone, please, if you can give Dr. Coughlin a big, big hand, and also help him by emailing him and being part of that survey so that we can help reach out to more families and help them give vision for their future. Thank you so much, Dr. Coughlin.
Thank you.